Hello everyone, back with solving word problems. This is really what it's all about, trying to figure out how you can use math to help you out in the real world. So let's take a look at some word problems. Now remember, some of these problems, you may have seen problems just like this in elementary school, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, whatever, 8th grade. However, we're not just solving the problems now. Now we also want you to write an algebraic equation or inequality to represent that problem that we could use to solve it. Okay, so that's the big difference. You might be able to logic them out, but while we're in class, we want to learn algebra. All right, so we are going to try to put all of these into an equation or inequality. First thing we always do is read the problem, and then we identify important information, okay? So the larger of two numbers is 7 less than twice the smaller number. So I see that I have a larger number and I have a smaller number. And I see that I'm comparing the larger number to the smaller number. Therefore, the smaller number is going to be my variable. So the larger of two numbers is 7 less than, so I'm going to put a negative in front of the 7 for less than, twice, which is 2 times something, so it will be 2 times s. Now the less than, right here, less than, with those words you have to switch the order that you do things in from what they see, okay? So you wouldn't write 7 minus 2 times s. You're going to write 2 times s minus 7. So that swaps the order whenever you have less than or greater than. So if the sum of the numbers, so sum, I'll put a plus sign here, is, make that an equal sign, 47. Find both of the numbers. So we have a larger number and we have a smaller number. We're going to call that smaller number s. Now, we cannot say s plus t equals 47 and say this is the smaller number, this is the large number, because we have two variables and we wouldn't be able to solve it. So we need to use only one variable. So being that we're comparing the larger to the small, we assigned the small with an s. Now for the larger, it's comparison. And we know that the larger number is twice the smaller, so 2s, and less than twice is minus 7. So minus 7, that will give us the larger. So now if we add those up, we should get 47. So over here, I'm just going to go ahead and add those up. So add them both up, and we have 3 s's minus a 7, and all of that should equal 47. And you should see we have a two-step equation. I'm just going to move that up here so that I have room to solve it. Okay, hopefully you're getting really confident with 1- and 2-step equations. If not, you should really go back and watch those videos because you have to know how to solve equations. So add 7 to both sides, and we have 3s equals, what is that, 54. I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and that will give us x equals, let's see, 3 goes into 5 one time with 2 left over, so 3 goes into 24 8 times. So x is, whoops, I switched it to x by mistake. I tend to use x's a lot. So s equals 18. So over here we'll say s equals 18. Now to figure out the larger number, we have to do substitution. So we're just going to substitute an 18 in for s, and I can do this in my head. So 18 times 2 is 36, minus 7 is 29. Now I'm just going to check it and make sure that my math worked out. So 8 plus 9 is 17. Got my 7. 2, 3, 4, 47. Okay, so it all checked out. So I now know that the two numbers are 29 and 18. All right, so looking at the next, find two consecutive numbers in which the sum of the integer is 49. So we're looking for two consecutive numbers in which the sum of the integers is, that's our equal sign, 49. You wouldn't really always have to identify integers, but I know some of you may have forgotten what an integer is. So back in elementary school, you were taught about the whole numbers, and your world started with 0. We went 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Okay, then when you got into middle school, we introduced you to integers, and integers are all of the whole numbers and their opposites. So that would now add on the -1, -2, all the negative numbers. So it's not anything that lies in between. So it's not like 1, 1.5 or -1.5, but all the whole numbers and their opposites are what we call integers. You really need to know that because on a lot of tests, they're going to ask and put in that word to write things in integers. So we don't want that to confuse you. Now we're looking for consecutive numbers, so we also need to know what is a consecutive number. And a consecutive means things are in order. So we want numbers that are together. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 are consecutive. 2 and 3 are consecutive. 3, 4 are consecutive. We only need 2 of them. So I am going to take a look at 2 and 3. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to be solving a simpler problem so I understand what to do for this problem. So since I have 2 numbers, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to have a first number and I know I'll have a second number. I need to give one of these a variable. So I'm going to give one of them a variable, and I think I'll make that the 2. I'm going to say the 2 is going to equal n. So my smaller number will equal n. So I'm going to go over here and say my first number is my smaller one. I'll make that also equal n. So if I have to compare the next number to n, what would I say? I would say that it's 1 more than n, so n plus 1. So over here, the second one will be n plus 1. So I used a small example, but this is going to work for anything. Let's say our numbers were 50, plug it in, the next one would be 51. If this were 80, the next one would be 81, 89, 91. So it doesn't matter. This is just solving a simpler equation so I understand what's happening. All right, now it says to find the sum of those, so I'm going to go ahead and add those up. And we have 2n plus 1, and that's going to equal 49. I could have written out n plus 1 equals 49, but then when I combine like terms, this is what I'm going to get. So I just am adding up and down, okay? So over here, we're going to go ahead and write 2n plus 1 equals 49, and we're going to solve it. Subtract 1 from both sides. We have 2n equals 48. Divide both sides by 2, and we end up with n equals 24. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to plug that in. I'm going to say n equals 24, and if n is 24, then n plus 1 is 25. And I'm going to add those up just to check and see if I did it right. 4 plus 5 is 9, 2 plus 2 is 4. Everything checks out, so I can confidently say that those are the 2 consecutive numbers. All right, so looking at the third one, find this time 3 consecutive odd integers with a sum of 123. All right, so now we're looking for 3 numbers. They have to be consecutive, but only odd integers. So I'm going to go ahead and again write a simpler problem. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, now I want consecutive numbers, but they have to be consecutive odd. So I'd have 1, the next odd would be 3, the next odd would be 5. So that gives me 3, so that's going to be my example. And over here, again, I know that I'm going to have a first number, a second number, and a third number. So I can call any one of these the variable. So I'm going to use n again. It doesn't matter if I start here, here, or here. The equation will look different. I'm going to make 1 the n once again. The first number will be the n. But had I made 3 the n, or the middle number I should say, the n, my equation would look different. I'd even get a different answer, but that's because I'd be solving for the second number and I'd have to plug into both of these. So it would still work out the same. It's just I'm gonna get the answer of the first number. So it's whichever one you chose, n, is the one we'll start out getting. So now to get to 3, I have to compare it. So let's see, for an odd number, I'm gonna go over 1, 2 places. So that's actually n plus 2. And to get to the third one, I have to go back to n and say that's n plus 1, 2, 3, 4. N plus 4. And this will be the same for any consecutive odd number. So here we'll say n plus 2 for the second number and n plus 4 for the third. And again, it told me that we're going to go ahead and add those up. So add them all up and we get 3n plus 6, and they say that that should equal 123. So now we're going to go ahead and solve that to find out what n is. You should be pausing these videos by the time we get to this point, and you've already seen how we're setting up the equation. You should be pausing the video and restarting it, because at this point you should be independent with this. So you want to check and make sure that you know how to do that on your own. So we have a -6, both sides, 3n equals, and that will be 17. Divide both sides by 3, and we have n equals, 3 goes into 11 3 times. That will be 9, 10, 11 with 2 left over. So 3 goes into 27 9 times. So I believe that n is 39. Add 2 to it, I have 41. Add 4 to it, and I have 43. All right, so let's check that out, make sure that we didn't do anything wrong. So we have 9 plus 1 is 10, 11, 12, 13, carry our 1, and we get our 3. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Worked out, check. All right, so I am confident in saying these are our 3 consecutive odd numbers. All right, see you in, I think I'm doing both word problems on this. So let me get my other sheet out. Okay, more word problems. There we go. Let me just make sure it's lined up for us. Okay, 2 more. They're certainly not always going to be about numbers. We know word problems are not always like that. So these are going to be probably what you're going to see more often. But the ones I just showed you, make sure you know how to do those. They show up on tests a lot. All right, so the length of a rectangle is 1 more than 5 times its width. If the perimeter is 38, find the dimensions. So we're looking for the length of a rectangle, and I'm going to go ahead and draw a picture because usually when they give me a shape, I tend to like to draw pictures. The length of the rectangle, so I'm going to look at this as the length, is 1 more, so I'm going to add a 1, more than, remember that more than, that tells us we're going to do it in the opposite order when we have more than or less than, 5 times, and I see the times is here, I'm just going to put up here, its width, so W for width. So we're comparing the length to the width, which means we're going to make the width just plain W. Before I go on and read any more, let's go ahead and fill this information in. So this looks like 1 plus 5 times W. But this said to switch it, so that's really going to be 5W plus 1. Now, did it matter in this case? It really didn't. But when it comes to subtraction, it does. So if you just always swap them, then whenever you have subtraction, you'll be good. Okay? All right. Now, whenever we have a variable that equals more than just a constant, when I say constant, I don't want a negative also on there. I like to put it in parentheses. So if you have a negative, anything else, you're going to go ahead and put parentheses around it. All right, so now we're going to try to find the perimeter, which is, well, we're not going to find the perimeter. I guess we know what it is. The perimeter is 38. We need to find the dimensions. Okay, so how do we find the perimeter? We can say the perimeter is the length plus the width plus the length plus the width, right? So we have 2 lengths and 2 widths. So I'm just going to write that as 2L plus 2W. All right, substitution time. So what does P equal? We already know that that is 38. We have our 2. The L is going to be replaced with 5W plus 1. And then we have plus 2, and the W is going to stay the same because we don't know what that equals. All right, so this time we have a multi-step equation to solve. So we're going to first distribute. So I have 38 equals 10W plus 2 plus 2W. Now I'm going to go ahead and combine like terms. I say I have a 10W and a 2W, so that will give us 12W plus 2. I'm going to finish it up here. So 38 equals 12W plus 2. All right, and now we have our 2-step equation, so we're going to go ahead and subtract 2 from both sides, and that is 36 equals 12W. Then I'm going to divide by 12, and we will get 3 equals W. Now to put it in standard form, it would be W equals 3. Doesn't really matter for this because it's a word problem. So over here I'm going to say W equals 3. And then if I want to find out what the length equals, I just substitute again. So 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. Now if I wanted to check this, all I have to do is say 16 plus 3 is 19, and then I'd have another 16 and a 3, so that's another 19, and 19 plus 19 is 38. So I know that my answers are the width is 3 and the length is 16. All right, and for the last one, for a fundraiser, Brad sold 2 less than 3 times the number of candy bars. This word does not belong here, calls, that Mary did. If they sold 334 total bars, find the number sold by each. All right, names are not usually something that I box, but because we have to sell for 2 different people, their names are important. We have to keep them separated, okay? So I'm going to list those out also. We have Brad and we have Mary. And we need to find out how many candy bars each of them sold. So Brad sold 2 less, so I'm going to subtract 2, less than 3 times the number of candy bars. Let's make the number of candy bars, we don't know what that is C, that Mary did. So we're comparing Brad to Mary. Since we're comparing Brad to Mary, Mary is going to be the C. So C is going to be the number of candy bars that Mary sold. And for Brad, let's see, he sold 3 times the amount less 2. All right. Now it tells us if they sold, so the total is 334, then find the number sold by each. So we need to add Brad's up and Mary's up, and we should get 334. So let's start by adding them up, combine the like terms, and that should equal 334. Looks like I've got some room right here, so I'm going to just start to solve it on my paper right there. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and we have 4C equals 336. Divide both sides by 4. We have C equals, let's see, what is that? Goes in there 8 times with 1 left over, and so that's 84. So Mary looks like is 84, and Brad is 84 times 3, which is 200. 252 minus 2 will be 250. And I want to check my work and make sure I've done that correctly. So 0 plus 4 is 4, 5 plus 8 is 13, and 2 plus 1 is 3. Good, I've got it right. So to answer the question, Brad sold 250 candy bars and Mary sold 84 candy bars. All right, guys, catch you in the next video.